Whether it was the MGM cybersecurity attack or attacks that targeted hospitals and healthcare companies all over the world, cybercriminals took things to a whole new level in 2023. Some of the most highly regulated and compliant industries were taken down by hackers, many of whom haven't even graduated from high school yet. We also saw an uptick in some of the most sophisticated attacks due to supply chain vulnerabilities. Your organization could be at risk, and you know what? You don't even know it. So we're going to talk about 7 events that have an enormous impact on your organization's cybersecurity strategy for next year. As we prepare for 2024, it's important to take these steps now to stay safe and secure. Let's start at the top of the list with an event everyone was talking about, the MGM attack. Was this the worst of 2023? Probably not. But this major cybersecurity event helped people understand that no one is safe and anyone, anywhere, could be the next target. This attack caused widespread disruption across MGM's properties, shutting down ATMs and slot machines and pulling the company's website and online booking systems offline. Remember, casinos are highly regulated, have great training programs, and have people who are great at following rules. But sometimes that's not enough. In 2024, make sure you consider your organization's risk appetite and create strategic overlap not just within your advanced security solution stack, but also when it comes to policies and trainings. Next is the credential crisis. Big events include lateral movement. Think about it this way. The attacker gets onto the network often as a normal user. Lateral movement is when the attacker then moves throughout the environment with privileged access. How does this happen? Let's go back to the events that have occurred on the Vegas Strip. Rumor has it there was a ransom paid. That means it was pretty darn ugly. Why did it get so ugly? Well, the attackers were able to move through the network using single sign-on tokens. Whether you're using passwords, multi-factor authentication, or passwordless authentication, as long as trust exists in the network, a temporary login artifact is stored. And that login artifact can often be replayed, which causes this lateral movement. And here's the thing, this type of lateral movement isn't going away in 2024. This is where strategic overlap comes in. First, making sure you have user identity management and then the strategic overlap. A mechanism in place to protect that user identity management system. When it comes to tokens and login artifacts, you need to treat them like the crown jewels of your network, the keys to your safe, the password to everything that's important in your life. So let me ask you this, what mechanisms do you have in place now to protect all of these things from hackers? Now on to the supply chain siege. Let me tell you something. Bad guys tricking users into clicking links or finding vulnerabilities inside firewalls isn't the only way hackers are getting into networks. In 2023, hackers gained access through vendors and supply chain attacks. In one example, over 60 credit unions' networks were held for ransom. What was the way in? Using access one of their vendors had to their networks to deploy ransomware. That's pretty darn scary when you think about it happening that way. These supply chain attacks are not single events or unlucky breaks for the victims. They represent a frightening continued trend that hackers are exploiting. Weakness in an organization's supply chain. This is a trend that will continue in 2024 and probably 2025, 2026, and so on. Steps to reduce the risk of supply chain threats include vendor evaluation, least privilege, and testing. And the easiest way to test supply chain risk or insider threat exposure is a recurring penetration test focused on these threat vectors. When is the last time you had a penetration test performed on your network? Now let's talk about data deluge. We just witnessed one of the biggest data breaches we've ever seen. Have you heard that before? It seems like this headline repeats itself every few months. The last one leaked almost 4 billion email and password combinations to the dark web. This is where you might be thinking, well, we have multi-factor authentication, so this isn't a big deal. We're safe. Here's the thing. This data is being used to improve the models hackers use to socially engineer their victims. The data is imported into tools to build social webs and AI models that allow hackers to figure out how people are connected and how to create an effective pretext while phishing users. In other words, yeah, this is a big deal. User training will be a critical component of your 2024 cybersecurity strategy. Phishing is continuing to get worse and continuing to victimize organizations everywhere. Next up is email compromise. In the last 12 months, just about everyone has a story about someone they know that has wired money right into a hacker's bank account. Honestly, for some people, it's 2, maybe even 3 stories. Loved ones have lost everything they've worked their entire lives for. Data shows the number of victims and the amount of money lost to these kinds of attacks continues to rise. Here's what I recommend. Consider a funds transfer policy as one of the next steps your organization takes to help mitigate this type of risk. You will also want to consider updating your organization's M365 phishing countermeasures to address these new threat vectors. Unpreparedness unraveled, another important one we must talk about. In the last 30 days, our security team helped 8 different organizations respond to ransomware events. And guess what we discovered? Only one of them had a solid plan that was both documented and tested. 1. This is not an IT deficiency. Incident response and recovery planning is actually an operational issue. Think about it this way. If there's a ransomware event, your IT team will have to get the computers back online, but you'll have to communicate to your clients, patients, and other vendors. You will have to work offline while systems are recovering. In 2024, have a tabletop exercise. This is the first step in building out an incident response plan. Think of it as a simple stimulation to identify areas where your organization needs to improve its incident response planning. Now let's discuss the compliance conundrum. The security community is buzzing about CMMC and how it's going to change cybersecurity forever. Here's the thing. As written, it will impact less than 5% of organizations in the United States. It will be years before any real case law exists or enforcement happens around CMMC. Cyber insurance, on the other hand, requires a compliance program today. When you sign up for cyber insurance, you make commitments to security controls. Making these commitments means not only do you have to implement them, you have to gather evidence that these controls are implemented. There's already case law out there where cyber insurance companies took their clients to task about falsifying information on their insurance applications. These organizations were not just denied their claims, they were taken to court for insurance fraud. Do you think these organizations knew they were screwing up? Nope. Next year, your cybersecurity strategy should include reviewing your cyber insurance policy and building a compliance program to validate you are doing everything you are committing to. All right, those are the 7 biggest trends in cybersecurity and how they will impact your organization's strategy for 2024. Where do you start? Well, talk to your team and create a plan that includes these 7 items. Create strategic overlap between security tools, policies, and training. Protect login artifacts as if they are the most important asset in your environment. Have a penetration test performed in your environment to detect supply chain weaknesses. Train your users to recognize and avoid social engineering attacks. Implement a funds transfer policy and improve your M365 phishing countermeasures to assist with advances in artificial intelligence-based scams. Simulate a cyber event by performing a tabletop exercise and use the findings to build or improve your incident response plan. And lastly, implement a compliance program to address your cyber insurance requirements and commitments. As cyber criminals get smarter and advances in technology continue to happen, it's important we stay 5 steps ahead of the bad guys. Plan now for a safer and more secure 2024. Big events will still happen, but let's make sure one of them isn't to you or your client's organization.